Shiaght Laa as befeiliam cyfalcher I oliu. Tan enamorum Maralyn Crellin. I'm Maralyn Crellin and I'd like to welcome you to this programme Shiaght Laa. In Shiaght Laa, we look at some of the cultural and historic events of the island. On Shiaght Laa, tashin jichen acusje taket and culturolis shandiach fanin. Bearder va muaturit ek Langlish, a boat that was wrecked on Lang Ness. Brian King tells us about the background to a new publication by Loaghtan Books about the wreck of HMS Racehorse in 1822. We'll start though with music. After the success of last year's inaugural event, the second Port Erin Jazz Festival will be taking place tomorrow, Friday the 7th of October, and on Saturday the 8th of October. On Friday the 7th, special guests are guitarist Martin Taylor and singer Alison Burns. Here's a sample of their work from their performance of the song J'attendrai.
J'attendrai car l'oiseau qui s'enfuit vient chercher le blé dans son nid. Le temps passe et court en battant tristement dans mon cœur si lourd. Et pourtant j'attendrai ton retour. Le temps passe et court en battant tristement dans mon cœur si lourd. Et pourtant j'attendrai ton retour.
Martin Taylor and Alison Burns performing on Friday evening the 7th of October in the Erin Arts Centre for the Port Erin Jazz Festival. The following evening, Saturday the 8th of October, also at the Erin Arts Centre, alto saxophonist Alan Barnes and pianist Dave Newton will be performing. Here's an extract from their performance of the popular Duke Ellington composition Don't Get Around Much Anymore. Pianist Dave Newton and saxophonist Alan Barnes, who claim they don't get around much anymore, which is not true because they're always in great demand. Alan Barnes also plays clarinet and flute, as does Becky Rourke, and she'll be there supporting Dave and Alan together with the Leeds College of Music Jazz Band. Other venues where you can enjoy music during the Port Erin Jazz Festival this Friday and Saturday will be the Bay Hotel and the Falcon's Nest Hotel. For lovers of the blues, on Saturday the 8th of October in the Centenary Centre in Peel and on Sunday the 9th of October at the Erin Arts Centre, Blue John Gregory, will be performing. Blue John Gregory, he'll also be presenting Howlin Mat, who's an accomplished blues singer and guitarist, particularly on a homemade guitar made in the way of the old Delta blues singers from a cigar box. Here's an example of his work.
Well, now I'm going down the gravel walk, take the right-hand road. Well, I'm going down the gravel walk, take the right-hand road. You know I'm not gonna stop walking till I get my baby's door.
Howlin Mat taking the gravel road there, and he'll be performing with support from Blue John Gregory at the Centenary Centre in Peel on Saturday evening the 8th of October and at the Erin Arts Centre on Sunday evening the 9th of October. Van Club Fawst Goldach, Corat Ebon, ons Nike Jeg Tree Jeggers died. Ag a tre shen va doliad ons mannen gedden storge echo hionet. De more ons Nike Jeg Shea Jeggers died, va persoonen ons mannen as an airsock komme Banglen Mannenach Jane Club Fawst Goldach. Ag veich en jesictus son ginu echo hionet hostel ag a tre shen, mush kerkid na kwegkid punt as va shen roch hostelach en son. Ni ai, ons Nike Jeg Hawk Jeggers died, who sheveish mucha as soel elian vannen, cully enel no, as Megedden and jesictus de yinu echo hionet erahon. Fry Joanna Kane, alta Jana Ovrian Inzach excel and Namara Furchan, Jay and sheveish mucha, McCown Kirail sheveish der tumadrin yes. And Vlain again, how Joanna Kane Toshacht, curle soon and der slider inzacher na schleien shirit de vena alta Jane Club Fawst Goldach, as va Banglen Vannen Corat Ebon. 200 years ago, in 1822, a revenue cutter, HMS Vigilant, was damaged during a storm in Douglas Bay. In fact, the anniversary of that incident is overnight, between the 6th and the 7th of October 1822. The Admiralty decided that the vessel should go for a complete overhaul at Plymouth. As there was need for a vessel to escort and assist the Vigilant, HMS Racehorse was dispatched. However, on her voyage up the east coast of the Isle of Man, HMS Racehorse ended up on the rocks off Dreswick Point on the southeast of Langness on the evening of the 14th of December 1822. The full story of these events, including 7 crew members who perished, and the bravery of the men of Castletown who risked, and 3 of them gave, their lives in their rescue efforts, is now available in a timely publication by Loaghtan Books in this 200th anniversary year of the events. The book recounts the story and includes historic official documents about it. A key and very interesting part of the book is about the work that took place from 1968 onwards, with divers going on to recover a whole range of artefacts from HMS Racehorse. Leading the project for the Isle of Man branch of the British Sub Aqua Club was Brian King, and the book contains not only his first-hand account but also some of the charts he drew at the time and from which the team was working. Here's Brian King talking about his involvement with the project and how they managed it.
The interest in maritime history and heritage obviously is something that drives people to become members of the Isle of Man branch of the British Sub Aqua Club. What was it particularly in 1968 that attracted attention to HMS Racehorse?
I was very interested in diving at this time, and I was going through the museum looking for details of shipwrecks, as was Brian Stigand, who I became very friendly with. But the Racehorse came about when I got chatting to Lieutenant Chambers from Castletown, retired Royal Navy, who I knew socially, and he told me about this ship out at Langness that he'd found out. And I followed it up from there with Brian Stigand. We went round and found the details in the newspapers, and that's what triggered the whole thing, actually. Mm. I think, like a lot of divers at that time, it intrigued you. Any shipwreck intrigued you, and you like to know a little bit about it. And in those days, of course, you quite often liked a souvenir. I mean, it was nice to get a ship's bell, for example, or something like that. But we went down on it just because of general interest. And I started going down and finding out a bit more about it. I became sort of involved in it. And it just went on its own from there. When I was first looking for the shipwreck and I decided to have a good look for it, I went down to the Maritime Museum at Greenwich to get some documentation, and all the records are there, but in the middle of it all they moved to Kew Gardens. So later on I went down for a week and spent a week at Kew Gardens going through all the records, because luckily, because it was an Admiralty ship, and the court-martial, all the records are kept there. And if you go down and you get the right references, you literally get a cardboard box tied with a red ribbon. They bring out and they open it up, and there you can actually see the captain's log, the muster book. I got the supplies books. I got all the information I could need. I spent a whole week down there, and of course, the result of that is the information which is in the book, which includes things like the lists of every crew member who was there, what they were carrying. An interesting aside to it is that the cruiser class, of which the Racehorse is one of, there were over 200 of them built, was very efficient, and the Dutch wanted one, and they actually went out and captured one called the Grasshopper and took it back to Holland and put their shipwrights over it, and they then used it in their navy, but it was then recaptured back again. It was renamed the Irene by the Dutch and recaptured back again by the British. But what was interesting was about 40, 50 years ago, a book was published in Holland listing all the information that had been found under the name of the brig Irene, which is what the Dutch had called it, and we used that book as a reference for all the information that we could get off the shipwreck itself.
Mm. You did develop it into a proper project. You went down in June 68 and did a very much organised dive on it. But then you had to learn extra techniques?
Yeah, well, when we first went down on it, we were just recovering the artefacts that were on the surface, because at that time it wasn't a protected wreck, and any diver could go down there, and having dived on it and found it, we realised that lots of artefacts were lying around generally and could just be picked up and could possibly disappear. So we then in conjunction with the museum, Larch Garrard as it was in those days, she encouraged us to go down and recover all the artefacts that we could find on the surface, as long as we logged where we found them. After that, it fizzled out a bit. We'd recovered all the surface artefacts that we could, and in fact I wasn't actually a member of the Isle of Man Tobacco Club at that time. I was doing it freelance. So from there, it just lapsed, and Colin Colvin, who was also involved with this at early stages, decided to follow it up and try and get some ownership or get some protection for it, and it was he who worked and got the protection organised with Johnny Crellin from the museum, who bought it on behalf of the Tobacco Club, and it became a protected wreck, and nothing was done then for a few years. When we went back again later on to do it properly, by then the Isle of Man Tobacco Club, which I was a member of then, and of course they owned the wreck by this time, we had our own boat, so that helped considerably, as opposed to the early days when we were sort of cadging lifts out in boats. But the club had got a couple of 16-foot and 18-foot boats, so we did get out there quite easy, operating from Castletown Beach most of the time. When we first went there, of course, all the surface artefacts had been recovered by us initially, so then we had to start digging a bit deeper. And at this time, we weren't sure how about to go about it, so that's when 6 of us went down to the Mary Rose and worked on it, and spoke to Margaret Rule and explained the situation, and she gave us some guidance about how we could tackle it. But of course the Racehorse was totally different from the Mary Rose. The Mary Rose was sitting in sand, a flat level bottom, whereas our Racehorse was in the middle of rocks, and jagged rocks at that, and tides and various things like that. So it was quite difficult, but we used to operate quite often from Castletown Beach. It was the nearest place, and we had to time it right with the tides. But it was okay, because it was shallow and just had to be careful of the tides. When we did go back down, as I said, the surface artefacts on the surface had been removed, but we could see various things underneath rocks and things like that. So we had to start what really became an almost major excavation by lifting rocks. Some of them must have been weighed a ton, half a ton, and certainly were 8 and 10 feet across. We had to lift them to get at the artefacts that were underneath, and then underneath those were smaller stones, which we moved by bucket, really, put them into bucket and walking along the bottom and taking them well out of the way. It was during one of these lifting sessions that when a rock slipped out of the slings and dropped, and we ended up finding what we call Tony's Hole. Tony's Hole, while we were recovering the rock from there, Tony Heaton, who the hole was named after, noticed some glistening bronze in the corner, and that started the excavation in that hole, which resulted in us finding the gunner's chest. While we were carrying out an organised excavation there, we were operating from Castletown, and Castletown commissioners were very helpful, and they loaned us the land of a hall just in the square, and we actually had an exhibition there of the artefacts as we were finding them, and many Castletown people came in to see it, and that was the start of the exhibition, which we then held again later on in Loch Promenade Church, where we had something like 60, 70 artefacts.
And with this being the 200th anniversary of the racehorse, there's going to be some special events. As you were the person who was leading the expedition, the project to recover these artefacts, you're quite involved with that as well.
Yes, it's been a return, really. I mean, the book, which was published this year, was from documents I've held all these years, and I was worried that they were going to be lost if something wasn't recorded. But from that, I got involved with the Isle of Man Tobacco Club again, and they've been very enthusiastic, and with the help of Alison Fox from the museum. And the idea is to celebrate the 200th anniversary, and the artefacts will hopefully be on display, and certainly at Castletown, some of them, hopefully at the commemoration, and then later on, will be the 200th anniversary of the RNLI, which resulted as regards, because of the racehorse, that will be going to 23, 24.
The racehorse itself is commemorated in the book, The Wreck of the Racehorse, that has just come out from Loaghtan Books. How did that come about?
I tried before to do a book with record all this, but various things had got in the way. But I accidentally found out about Loaghtan Press and Sarah Goodwin and George Hobbs, and I just showed them the material and said, I've got all the material here, but it needs some sorting out and putting into context, and would you like to have a go at it? And after about 2 or 3 weeks looking at all the information, they came back and said, yes, we'll go for it. And the result is the book.
Brian King, whose account of all that was involved in finding and recovering artefacts and information associated with HMS Racehorse, forms the central part of the publication by Loaghtan Books, which is simply called The Wreck of the Racehorse and is available now at £14.95. It's well illustrated, including some images from the collection of Ray Stanfield, who's advised Brian King to get in touch with Sarah Goodwins and George Hobbs of Loaghtan Books in the first place. In the Manx Society's Volume 21, Mona Miscellany, second series, edited by William Harrison, he outlines the events of the 14th of December 1822, but it comes under the heading The Rose on the Beam, and he says this: It appeared that a rose had been painted on one of the beams of the cockpit of the vessel. This incident induced a gentleman then in the island, Captain Hooke, son of Major Hooke of the Royal Artillery, who had resided for many years in Douglas, to write the following song, which appeared within a few days after the loss of the racehorse.
The Rose on the Beam. The rose is now withered and sunk in the grave. Its leaves are now blighted and wet in the wave. No more through the stream the proud racehorse goes. Yet life's brightest sunshine was under the rose. Oh, sigh not, for fancy shall picture full true all the moments of gladness which there swiftly flew. And as memory shall trace her full sail down the stream, do you think she'll pass heedless the rose on the beam? Ah, no. Yet time, sand must run on and decay, and memory, like evening's last gleam, fade away. The heart must be blighted, life's current be froze, ere the days be forgotten, when under the rose. Then tarry ye moments, too swiftly ye fly. Our leaves like the rose must soon wither and die. Life quickly shall pass, 'tis a feverish dream, and too soon be forgotten the rose on the beam.
The Rose on the Beam, a song written by a Captain Hooke following the loss of HMS Racehorse on the 14th of December 1822. Ysyshen Curlesh in just Jerry and Claire Shaw, Shiaght Laa. That's all from Shiaght Laa this time. So from me, as Mishen Vo Maralyn Crellin, sledding you